All right, looks like we've got a good group of folks logged in here, so let's get started. Um, if I haven't had the chance to meet you yet, my name is Holly. I am the Customer Success Manager here at Giraffe for the Americas and Europe. And I actually have a background in computational design from previous work experience. So I'm really a lover of our generative design features in Giraffe, and I'm really excited to show you a little bit on how to use those today. I am going to launch a poll so that we can see what everyone's interested in building today. I'm going to start off the webinar with just some basics and show you kind of how to navigate through the Flow Builder. But based on the poll results, we'll build something custom together. And the last piece of sort of housekeeping, if you have any questions during the webinar, please feel free to drop those in the chat. We'll also try to keep some time at the end. And then at the end, if you hang out, we can do live Q&A as well. I'll stop the recording. You can raise your hand and ask your question live, and we can go through specifics together then. And very excited to announce also at the end of this webinar, I'm going to give a little preview of Giraffe 5, which is launching the first week of December. And we have a really amazing upgrade to our Flow Builder coming in Giraffe 5. So I'm going to show you a little bit about how that works as well. So with that, let's dive right in here. So, looking at our Giraffe screen here, and I'm just going to give you some sort of background information about what is generative design, what does that mean in Giraffe, etc. So to start out, generative design is just an iterative design process. It's sort of using the computer as your coworker, and it's giving the computer a set of instructions that generate outputs that meet your constraints. It allows the computer to automate repetitive or boring tasks, and it helps you get maybe a more unique result that you wouldn't have been able to get if you were drawing it manually. The computer does generative design based on an algorithm, and an algorithm, I'm sure you've heard that word flying around, but it's really just a big word for a set of instructions. And in Giraffe, those sets of instructions we call a flow. And you'll see why when we take a look at the flow builder. It looks a lot like a flow chart. So a flow in Giraffe is just a collection of algorithms or little mini sets of instructions that you put together to get a result that you're looking for. We also, the result of that flow is a parametric design. We like to call those geometries smart geometries in Giraffe. And the reason for that is because the geometry will update dynamically based on your changes or inputs. Whereas, a classic Giraffe geometry is exactly what you draw. You'll get, a rectangle, a box that has some parameters assigned to it. But with the smart geometry, often you're drawing something very simple, maybe just a line, maybe just a rectangle, and getting lots and lots and lots of geometries generated out of that initial shape. So that's why we like to call it smart. So a few more just basics in this sort of generative design flow. Remembering that we're just giving the computer a set of instructions. In Giraffe, we have a few more pieces of language to keep in mind. So a feature is a geometry that you explicitly draw. So if I were to just draw a plain old rectangle in Giraffe, this is a feature. And this feature currently doesn't have any parameters assigned to it. It's literally just a rectangle that is, almost 6,500 square feet, and it's geolocated in, I don't even remember where I put this. I think middle of Philadelphia. So, that's all that we know about that feature. But in the Flow Builder, you can apply a set of algorithms or instructions to that rectangle and get something that's much more complex. For example, if I set down a very similar rectangle with a flow already assigned, I've still only drawn that initial feature, but now I have 4 parcel lots and some townhomes drawn on those lots after only drawing that one feature. So that's kind of the power of the Flow Builder, is you can get lots and lots of geometries generated from just sort of a minimal initial drawing. All right. So with that, let's just dive right in here and do our first flow. So I'm going to start with something really, really basic, and that is just creating a row of trees. So you can get to a row of trees from this lightning bolt here in the drawing palette, and these are kind of some pre-made flows that Giraffe has put here for, some of our most common use cases that are really easy to just slap down. You don't have to make it from scratch. But let's see how we can make something from scratch that looks kind of like this. So we're going to have it be a line. It's going to generate trees along that line, and the trees are going to be kind of a random assortment of heights. So if you remember from just a couple moments ago, the feature is the initial geometry that you start with. So I'm going to start with just a line. And with this line selected, I now have this option in my left-hand palette to open the Flow Builder. And when I click that, it's going to give me a series of sort of starting transforms, which is what we call algorithms in this UI. And you're just going to pick one to start with. I like to look at what the sort of preview is to see what I might want to use. And because I'm trying to set sort of evenly spaced trees along this line, I think this array might be what I'm actually looking for, because I can see evenly spaced points, and I know I can apply a tree to those points using the tree usage later. So I'm going to start by just adding those points. And you can see as soon as I've added those points, my line has disappeared, and now I just have a series of points that continuously generate as I adjust the size and shape and scale of this line. I might want to change the spacing of these. They sort of come in at a starting sort of arbitrary spacing. And what I can see now when I have this line selected is I have this new section in my properties palette called Generated Features. And the Generated Features is a list of all of the results of the algorithm that we have applied to this feature. So I can see right now I have one output. And when I click on that, okay, this output, doesn't tell me a whole lot, except I can see that I can apply a usage. And if you remember back to your Giraffe kind of basics, the usage is just a collection of attributes that you can apply to anything in Giraffe. And it's how Giraffe does its math. So you can draw the same rectangle and give it the residential usage, and you'll get all kinds of things like unit counts and parking requirements and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But that same rectangle, you could also apply the amenity usage. And obviously with amenity, you're going to get different things. You're going to get maybe a number of jobs required, and maybe maintenance cost and things like that go along with amenity spaces. So here we're just going to search for that tree usage, and I can see that here. And as soon as I apply the tree usage, now I can see that each of those points has become a tree as I am drawing. And I can do all the typical things with the trees. I could change it to pine trees if I wanted to. Just give my internet a second to catch up there, or keep it the round style. But this isn't letting me change the distance between these trees. So I wonder where that might be. And I can see from a little bit of exploration that that array transform that I applied before is here nested in this list before the output. And that's because the array is the set of instructions that's being done to that initial feature that's turning into this output that we've just turned into trees. So if I want to change the spacing, I have to change the instructions on that transform. So if I just open that up, I see that I have very simply a spacing option here. And I could change this maybe to 50 feet if I want them to be further apart. If I want them to be sort of a pattern where it's, you know, maybe a couple of trees next to each other, you can sort of adjust that and add as many different spacings as you want. The offset at start just says the start of the line. It's not going to start right at that initial point, but maybe I want it to, so I can set that to 0, and now it starts right where I start the whole thing. And then there's all kinds of other settings. I recommend, if you're interested in using these settings, that you just go to our knowledge base and search for the array transform, and that explains what all of the different settings do. But also, you're not going to break anything. Just try it out and see what happens. That's one of the best ways in computational design to kind of figure out how this language of algorithms and instructions work. Just sort of try stuff and see what happens. And the more you try things, the more interesting results you might get. Like, for instance, I see this randomized scale by percent. I wonder what that does. And that's pretty cool. It actually makes each of the trees kind of a different size. And I like that because it makes it sort of have a more natural look. So that is a great thing to apply there. So that's our row of trees. And now I have sort of this customized, you know, algorithm where I made that unique spacing where it's sort of like pairs of trees every 50 feet. And maybe I want to reuse that again because I drew this other row of trees over here that has a different set of instructions applied to it, but maybe I like this new one better. The secret to doing that in Giraffe is the eyedropper command. Eyedropper shortcut is Y, or you can search for it in the command line, which is your space bar, and you get this whole set of commands that you can use straight from there. But I love using just the Y shortcut. So with my initial geometry selected, actually I want to copy this one on here. So with my initial geometry selected, I'm just going to use Y on my keyboard. I just clicked the letter Y on my keyboard, and then I'm going to click on the geometry that I like. And you can see that instantly applied the exact same criteria and settings and assumptions to this new line of trees. So it's really easy to reuse your flows once you've created them. So that's flow number 1. I want to pause for just a second, just to remind you, if you do have any questions while you're watching this, please throw them in the meeting chat, and I'll try to get to them as we go. So the kind of next flow that I want to show off, that's a very commonly used one, is our parking algorithm. So you can, of course, always just use the pre-made ones in your flow features. So you can just, you know, grab car park, place down your rectangle, and you're good to go, and you can just start sort of editing this. But maybe you know, started out with just our plain parking usage that doesn't have any visible parking spaces. It's just kind of doing it mathematically. And maybe you got this shape, you know, all customized, you really worked hard on it, and it's exactly how you want it to be. But now your boss comes to you and says, I want to, you know, visibly see those parking spaces. So this is very easy to add. You can just click on that shape. And again, remember our Open Flow Builder button over here. So I'm going to click Open Flow Builder, and I'm just going to scroll down until I find parking lots, which There it is. So I'm just going to click on parking lots, and that's going to throw down my parking spaces on that shape. It kind of initially tries to optimize for what it thinks will be the most spaces, but of course you can always adjust afterwards. And if you remember, the way you adjust it is in this new generated features section that's come up in our properties palette. So I'm just going to click on car park. And because the shape we started with already had a usage assigned, that usage has now been assigned automatically to the output. We're good to go. It's already there. But what we want to adjust is the actual parking lot settings. So I'm just going to open that up. And I'm going to make this sort of more a typical United States size, sort of parking bays and drive aisles. We've got bigger cars here, so we have it a little bit larger. And you can see there's, again, additional settings here. You can add islands, adjust the island width, change the bay angle. But the one that I find the most useful a lot of the times, especially with a uniquely shaped parking lot, is to use this choose reference edge button. And that tells the algorithm which edge to start from. So right now it's starting from this edge here because that's the first sort of edge that I drew. But maybe I want it to start from the back because that edge is a little bit straighter. And you can see now that my parking lanes sort of make a lot more sense. They're a lot straighter along. So you can always just sort of adjust that starting edge and just see which layout you like the most and seems like it's going to be, you know, the most constructible, or just the one that gives you the most spaces. So it's always easy to go in and edit that. You can just click on the parking lot, click into the generated features, and adjust. And I do want to note at this time that you can do those same actions with a flow from the generated features, from the flow features tool in the drawing palette. You'll see here I drew this one straight from there, but it already has the generated features applied. So if I wanted to adjust these parking lots, I can still get to it the same way. I just got to open up that car park settings, and then I can do the same thing. I can adjust the reference edge, I can change the parking bay size, add islands, all of that stuff you would have done if you made it from scratch as well. All right. So I have some results from the poll. Looks like we've had a good representation of voting here. And it looks like our number one sort of request here is the single family residential subdivision with roads. I love this one. It's really, really fun. So I'm gonna just build that one. If you voted for a different one and you wanna see those things, the person who voted for parametric wrap, we actually have a video on our YouTube channel that goes through parametric wrap detail by detail, and that's all that's in that video. So it'll take 3 minutes of your time to watch that video and you'll be good to go. And then the zoning envelope with land use fill, let's see if we have time at the end, but also the preview of Giraffe 5 might be right up your alley. So with that said, let's start building this single family residential subdivision. So the way I love to do this single family subdivision is it is a really big combination of multiple flows. So we're actually going to get into the flow builder where it looks like a flow chart, and we're connecting multiple algorithms together. It's going to be really fun. So the first thing I want to do is just start with my polygon. And I am actually going to draw a polygon from scratch by using the shortcut P. And I'm just going to sort of follow along these roads. I'm just going to use this as a guide because it exists for me in this project, so that'll make it easier. And I have my little polygon here. The next thing I want to do is kind of subdivide this. Luckily, we have an algorithm that's literally called subdivision. And the whole purpose of the subdivision algorithm is it turns a larger space into smaller sections, usually with the intention of turning those sections into parcels or lots. So with that rectangle selected, I'm going to click Subdivide to Lots. And I'm going to see the result here. And you know, something I'm noticing is these parcels, because of the shape of this area, are really, really, really long. And you know, that might not really be ideal for what I'm trying to do. So what I could do is actually subdivide this twice. And that's what I'm going to do. So stick with me. It's going to be kind of crazy. But the first thing we're going to do is just change this initial subdivision to solve for much larger areas. So I'm going to set this to be like, let's see what we get when I make it really, really big. That might have been too big. Let's see. There we go. Some nice big initial starting points here. So we've got these bigger sort of areas. I'll make the minimum area maybe larger so we get some of these smaller lots out of here. There we go. And again, with this, just like I was saying before, you just sort of want to play around with it, see if you can get, like, see what result you get just by playing around with it. So there we go. I've now got these sort of larger lots. And my idea is that I want to take each of these sort of larger areas and actually further subdivide them into my actual parcels. But you're probably thinking, wait, well, to do that, we have to add another whole section to our flow. How do we do that? Well, with this selected, we've still got this Open Flow Builder button. And when I click it the second time to add another instruction to my algorithm, I actually get the real full flow builder. And this is what I was mentioning before, that it looks kind of like a flow chart. And I think the flow builder is really cool because you can actually see what's happening a little bit in the background. So if you remember, I started by just drawing this kind of crazy shaped polygon. That is the initial feature. And then we applied this subdivide to lots algorithm here. And that subdivide to lots generates this output. And I'm actually going to go a step further here, make that output be the parcel usage. And I'll just save my changes and you can see that here. Now it is the parcel usage. But what I want to do before I get to my output is actually add another set of instructions. So after subdivide lots and before parcel, we have this plus button. And the plus button allows you to define another set of instructions. So I'm going to just click on that. And then I get all of these, you know, transforms that we've looked at before. But the one I'm going to pick now again is subdivide to lots. We'll just give it a second there. And now I can put in what my actual targets are, again, for the, you know, subdivided sizes of each of these parcels. I'm going to perhaps not split these on the spine and see what we get. Yeah, those look interesting. They might be a little too long and skinny, I'm not sure. Let me just save and see what we've got. We'll just give it a second to update here. Yeah, I might need to still subdivide these a little bit. I'm going to use the measure tool to just see what we've got. M for measure. So this is 200 by, yeah, these are a little bit funky. So let's make them a little bit bigger. So now that I've applied that second set of instructions, you can see them here. So my first set of instructions was the big subdivide, and this is my second set of instructions. And I do think I want to split them on the spine. And maybe I want the minimum frontage to be 65. And my maximum frontage to be 90. Make these more like single family lot sizes. Maybe make the minimum area 8. and we'll start to get more square shaped, kind of typical lots. All right, a little bit interesting. Obviously right now we don't have any roads, so it's hard to get to these interior parcels, right? So let's add some roads. And again, I'm going to go into Open Flow Builder. And where I want to add the roads is actually around these sort of larger parcels that I first created. So what I want is another set of these outer lines. So I'm just going to click on the split here. And this is where it really starts to look like a flow chart, because I've now got multiple outputs from the initial input. And I am going to turn these polygons into lines by using explode, because the road tool is line based. So I'm just adding those roads here. I'm going to make these maybe 24, make the sidewalk 6, nice big wide boulevards, and save that. We'll just give it a second to generate. And now this is really starting to look like that subdivision with parcels within. So you can really start to see it take shape, and it's pretty cool as you do. One thing I did think of is I want to make sure that these parcels are inside of that road area. So what I actually want to do before I subdivide these is make this a little bit, make each of these bigger parcels a little bit smaller so they sit inside the road. And I'm gonna offset, maybe do 15, save those. There we go. And now I've got these parcels that sit a little bit more inside of those road area. And they're starting to look even more like a single family parcel size. So I do want to pause for just a second before I start adding the actual single family buildings on top of this. Please type any questions you have in the meeting chat. We have gone from very, very simple to very complex quite quickly in this training. So I just want to make sure that we're not losing anyone here. And I'm just going to draw my little single family. Actually, I'm gonna do it. Gonna go into top view. And I'm just trying to draw this straight so that it's really easy to align to my sort of crazy shaped parcels here. I'm gonna make this single family building like the most boring single family building we've ever seen. And maybe put just a little garage here off the side. And I'm going to get rid of the dwelling count on that one, make it one level. And then the last thing I have to do is turn this into a group. And you'll see why I'm going to turn it into a group in just a second. But now I have my little, basic single family home shape. And what I want to do is stick this group in the center of every single one of these parcels. So I'm just going to, again, add another output to my flow here. So I'm going to just open up the flow builder. And where I want this output is to be on these resultant parcel shapes. So I'm going to take my site output again and split it. And then this time I want to grab the center point of all of these parcels. So I'm just going to click here and find centroid, which is the center point. And then what I need to do is turn that center point into that group that I just created. So we have this really cool algorithm that is called group instance. And the group instance algorithm lets you either pick a group from the map. So I just selected pick and I'm going to click on that guy and it adds it. Sometimes with my internet, with my screen sharing, it's not so happy with that. So we'll try this again. And I might just type in the group name. That's how I typically do it anyway. Centroid, instanced group, and I called it single fam. So I'm just going to type single, whoops, gotta spell it right, single fam in there, and then save my changes. And now, magically, an instance of that group has been popped on every single one of those parcels. And what's really cool about this is if I edit this group in any way, so maybe I'm going to add like a 10-foot bump out the back, all of my groups have instantly inherited that change. So this is a really cool algorithm to use to manage your sort of patterns or typical designs. You can just edit the floor plan in one place, and anywhere you've placed that, it'll inherit that change in sort of one fell swoop. So now I've got this subdivision that is dynamic. If I adjust the shape, it'll take a second to think about it because it's a lot of geometry here. But now it's completely parametric. So I can just start, kind of placing my designs down in any sort of parcel area that I have that I'm trying to do a feasibility study on. And because I've created this already, I can just use it again and again. So if you've got sort of a prototypical set of designs that you're usually using for your subdivisions, this is a really great thing to save in a design library, and then just drop it into your projects again and again to reuse. So that was our single family residential subdivision with roads. When I click on this, you'll see that we've got our three main outputs. We've got our parcel, we've got our roads, and we've got this last one that's just called output site, but this is our houses. So I'm going to actually rename that one just to make it a little bit easier to find. And you'll see that you can apply a usage to this, but you don't actually need to because it's inheriting the usage from that group. So it's already got the information assigned because of that group. So if it's easier for you, you can apply the single family usage there. I would get rid of the dwelling count and the levels just because you don't want this one to count. You want your actual group instances to count in your urban. But if that makes it a little bit easier for you to understand what's going on because it gives you the symbol, by all means, that works. All right, again, I'm going to pause for just a second, see if anyone wants to drop any questions in the meeting chat. And then what we're going to do is actually jump over into our staging version of Giraffe, and I'll show off some things coming soon in Giraffe 5. So. All right, seems like everyone's on board, no questions here. So let's pop over into Giraffe 5. Ooh, so the Giraffe 5, it is a lot of updates to our user interface to make it a bit more streamlined. We've combined a lot of functions that in the past were sort of placed in different areas and put them together. It's really exciting for a lot of reasons, but one of the biggest things coming in this release is our beta of the new Flow Builder. And the new Flow Builder is a really, really great enhancement for sort of the end users of your computational designs. So if you're the computational design expert and you're building these really cool flows and then you're handing them off to someone who's maybe not as much of a technical user, sometimes in the current Flow Builder, it's a little bit hard to figure out exactly what you're looking at. You open up the Flow Builder and you're like, oh, this looks scary, and you instantly close it. So sometimes it's a little bit hard to convince people that it's, fun and safe and good to use these things. In the new Flow Builder, the controls are all surfaced at the normal sort of properties palette level. So when I click on this flow, I have all of these inputs that I have defined as the sort of computational designer who created this flow. And as an end user, I never have to look at that flow builder ever. I might not even know it exists. All I'm doing is editing these sort of inputs here. So maybe instead of a 100-foot radius, I want 150 foot. I want it to go a little bit further. Maybe instead of, actually this one's in meters, so 150 meters. Maybe I want my density radius to be 75. And all I have to do is type that in. I don't have to open up this crazy flow chart and try to figure out what I'm doing and open all these nested menus. It's completely surfaced. So another cool thing about the new Flow Builder is that you can actually reference layers. So this specific flow is generating based off of this parcel layer. So previously the Flow Builder, you would have had to copy these parcels into your project as giraffe geometries and then turn them into usages. But this flow actually dynamically does that for you. And you can see as I move it around, it's updating based on whatever parcels are within the radius of what's currently selected. So that's a really cool update. And this is what I was saying to the person who was interested in the land use studies. This is really excellent for land use studies. So you can do your sort of density upzoning studies very, very quickly with being able to reference the layer into the flow and turn it into usages as you go. So yeah, this is the sort of output for the new Flow Builder. The actual Flow Builder itself is also really cool, especially if you are a computational designer. So I'm just going to open that up. We now have this one-click open, and it opens as a flyout, which is really, really nice because you can sort of have multiple things open at once now. And you'll see here, this looks way more technical perhaps than the previous Flow Builder did. But if you are familiar with Grasshopper, Dynamo, any other visual coding interface, this is going to be super familiar to you, very easy to figure out. It works very, very similarly to Grasshopper and Dynamo, which is my background is in Dynamo for computational design, and I picked this up very quickly. But what's great, like I mentioned before, if you are that computational designer, it's as easy as adding a in node to define different inputs for your end user. So all you have to do is give the in input a name and a type, and then it automatically shows up here as something that user can edit. So you've done all this great work, but they don't need to look at that. They don't have to edit anything in here. It's hidden off to the side. All they have to do is, this is actually a point based. So if I add, if I add a point here, and then add the flow property and apply, gotta make this a little bit bigger. As soon as I start accidentally deleted it. As soon as I start inputting those values, I'm going to get my outputs. So super easy to reuse, and you can see I never looked at the flow editor, and I also didn't have to use the Y command. I can just apply that flow as a property to any new geometry, and it'll automatically start working. So really cool stuff on the horizon. Definitely keep your eyes out for those release emails. You're probably seeing an alert in your Giraffe app that's saying, hey, changes are coming. Come read this blog post. Take a look at all of that stuff, and just be aware. Giraffe 5 is coming the first week of December. It's got really, really cool user interface updates and also really amazing generative design and computational design improvements. So that's the end of the webinar today. We took a look at the flow builder today and how to build a couple of basic flows, including a row of trees and a car park. And then we built a custom subdivision for single family with roads, super, super fun. And then we ended off with looking at the next iteration of the flow builder. So if you are interested in learning anything more about any of these things, one, your best place to start is our YouTube page where we have a whole playlist on generative design and flow builder. So definitely take a look at that. Two, you can take a look in our knowledge base, which is linked right in the question mark in the bottom right-hand corner of your Giraffe window. And then the last thing you can do is you can shoot us an email. If you're interested in signing up for Giraffe and getting to take advantage of all of these things, shoot me an email. I'm Holly at giraffe.build, and I can definitely give you all the information to get you set up. So with that, I will stop recording. And if anyone has any further questions that they want to ask live, please feel free to raise your hand and we can ask those questions live now. If you're ready to go, thanks so much for coming today, and hopefully we'll speak again soon.